Good morning, class, and welcome to Communication 212, Writing for Communication. I'm your instructor, Emily Montagnier. Now, before we get started with introducing the class, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm a graduate of UL. I actually have a bachelor's degree in music, and I decided to come back and get my master's of science in communication. And while I was studying communication, I studied both broadcasting and advertising. My professional career includes working at KRVS, that's the radio station located in Burke Hawthorne Hall. I also worked at the local TV station KATC TV3 as a news producer. I worked on their morning show and on several of the evening programs. And currently, I also work part-time as a book and periodical editor, working with different people at UL, mainly in the communication department. Now, a few ground rules for the classroom. I know we aren't in the actual computer lab yet, but as of right now, we're going to work remotely. That's now through January 28th. If you think you're going to be unable to participate in these remote sessions for some reason, please contact student services and let them know. Like if you get a positive COVID test or something, you can go there. Well, don't go there, obviously, if you're sick, but go send them an email with your positive test results, and they will email me and all of your other instructors to let us know what's happening. And also, if you have any other kinds of things that happen, like if you are in the military and you get deployed somewhere, or if there's a family emergency or something else that happens, you can send an email to me or to student services with the appropriate paperwork, and we'll discuss a case-by-case solution based on what's happening. And of course, if you have any questions about the class, you feel free to send me an email. You can always schedule a Zoom meeting with me to discuss something. Let's say a lecture video wasn't clear enough, you need a little more information, and we're emailing and not really clicking on what's happening. Please, feel free to ask me for a Zoom meeting. I do keep some time available to answer any questions via Zoom, especially when we are working remotely. And of course, always maintain a certain level of common courtesy and decency with everyone. If you do work in group projects for something, I, recommend having a kind of positive, constructive criticism whenever you need to offer some to people. And it usually helps everybody learn a lot better than if we just go with a straight negative outlook, obviously. Now, your required materials for this class, they did update your textbook from the one I was using last semester. So it's Dynamics of Media Writing, but now the third edition by Vincent Phillock. The second edition looks like it still basically follows the same format. I've been working with the second edition for a while, but they did update some of the terms in like the web chapters and some other things. So if you can get the third edition, if you already have the second one, it really isn't a huge issue. Just make sure that you kind of double check your terms and everything for each chapter. And you do need access to the Associated Press style book. We will have several AP style quizzes in the class, and that is available as an online text. That is the one I recommend. If you would prefer a book, of course, the book is available. But I feel like the search the more searchable online version is much better and easier to use whenever you're doing your quiz work. Sorry, that's my cat who's screaming next to me. Now, you do also need to access the Merriam-Webster online dictionary and thesaurus. The excuse me, the Merriam-Webster dictionary is available for free. There are, I think, only one or two terms I've ever checked in there where it said you needed to have the premium subscription. So it's a really great free resource to use for this class and any other writing classes you have. And of course, that means that you do need a computer or some sort of access where you can actually type papers, and you do need to be able to access your Moodle account. Now, we're talking about media writing. Well, what does media mean? There are lots of different types of media nowadays. Of course, there are people who write for newspapers, they write online articles. That might mean magazine websites or maybe blogs. They also, of course, have people who write for broadcasting, and broadcasting now includes not only TV and radio, but also people who create podcasts. Now, a lot of those might seem like they're kind of spontaneous, spontaneous shows, but most of the time they do have a producer or a writer working somewhere in the somewhere with the group, developing at least an outline about what's supposed to happen in the show. So you're going to learn about creating those kinds of stories. We're also going to discuss writing for public relations, advertising and marketing, as well as creating social media posts. And at the end of the semester, you will create a web portfolio and learn how to work on LinkedIn and make that available for any potential future jobs. Now, our two main objectives for this course are to learn to communicate fact-based information in an effective and easy to understand way, and also to learn more about writing for news and other media. So the main thing I hope that you take away from this class is learning how to find facts online. Not every website is a good source. And sometimes even websites that are good sources perhaps have old information on them. And you need to be able to learn how to find the most recent information. And then once you learn how to find and understand that recent fact-based information, how to communicate it to an audience based on your audience's needs. And that is the key of writing for media. No matter what medium you're using, you're learning how to effectively communicate certain ideas to other people, whether it's making an Instagram post or writing a traditional news article. Both of them have specific audiences with specific needs, and you're learning how to frame your information for that particular group. Now, how are we going to work toward those objectives? Well, first of all, you're going to learn about research, which hopefully most of you have already had a little experience with this, but we're going to be looking at fact-based, reliable sources, and of course, how to check even those reliable sources and make sure that we have enough information to effectively help our audience understand why they should trust us and trust our sources. And of course, you need to learn how to find information that was published recently. So whenever you're looking at an online article, where's the publication date? What do particular publication dates mean? Sometimes an article was published a year ago, but updated yesterday. So you need to learn how to look at a web page and see that information. And of course, we're going to learn how to cite source materials. Now, whenever you write for any type of media, of course, you're usually referencing an outside source at some point. Whenever you are referencing the sources, you need to know how to name them in your article. And I'm not talking about a what's called a parenthetical citation. That's where you have the little parentheses around it. I mean, actually mentioning them in your paper in a way that's understandable for your audience. And also, for this class, you're going to need to create reference lists at the end. I need to be able to see your sources and know that you're actually using someone who would be a good source of information for whatever topic you're writing about. And you're also going to learn story development. So this, of course, changes slightly depending on your audience's needs, but all of them are cases where you need to identify the most important elements, and not only what are in general usually the most important elements, but what are the most important elements based on your audience's needs. And of course, you're going to learn AP style and other grammar basics. You should have completed a couple of English courses before this class, so you should have at least some idea of what we're talking about when we start going over grammar and everything. AP is the Associated Press. They have a particular style guide used by the majority of traditional news media. Even if a news outlet doesn't specifically abide by AP, they will use some variation of that style. So it's a really great technique to learn. And for anyone who's in marketing or public relations, also, you do need to know AP style because you're often having to send press releases using that style as well. And I'm also going to review how to proofread your own work before you turn it in. And of course, how to identify common errors that often includes run-on sentences, spelling, commas. Spelling sometimes can be a really big one. Sentence fragments, making sure that you have that subject and that predicate and that you have a verb in there, making sure that you're using active voice. All of those things are really important whenever you're delivering a message to your audience. And of course, we're going to discuss traditional news writing techniques. That includes writing a lead, as well as developing stories based on the inverted pyramid, or sometimes another format called the trapezoid or hourglass style of writing. And we'll also talk about the differences between writing for broadcast and print and online medium. And I wanted to review your grading scale as well. I do use the 10-point system. So a 90 to 100 will be an A, 80 to 89 B, 70 to 79 C, 60 to 69 D. And of course, anything below that is an F. And I do use weighting for your class projects and quizzes and everything. What that means is everything in your attendance will add up to 10% of your grade. Your chapter quizzes and AP quizzes each count for a quarter of your grade, and the majority of your grade consists of what you write. So because this is a writing class, the majority of your grade is determined by your writing projects. If you don't turn in half of your writing projects, you're almost definitely going to fail the class. So another way to put that, if you do really well on all of your writing projects, but only do so on the quizzes, that means you are more likely to have a B or maybe even an A, depending on the grade on your grades in the class, than if you were to do poorly on the writing projects, but do well on something else. So keep that in mind. The best way, of course, to ensure a good grade in the class is to attend and participate and make sure that you turn everything in on time. Now for attendance, I am going to have you sign in on Moodle both while we're working remotely and when we're back in the classroom. So make sure that you do have access to Moodle. And of course, make sure you show up, participate in class. I do reserve the right to develop any pop quizzes if I think they would help for a particular lesson, or if we need, an extra grade or something for attendance. I'll often include those. It may include something related to current events or possibly something from your reading or from a lecture. Now, writing projects, of course, I'll go over these for each project, and you will be provided with examples and written instructions. My biggest thing is please read those, follow directions, look at what I have. If you read it and you don't understand it, ask me right away. Please don't wait until the day a project is due to ask me a question about something, because it's probably going to be too late. All of your projects have a very clear deadline, and I most of the time they're you have at least a week to turn them in. So you should have plenty of time to review directions and see if there are any questions you have about it. Or if you encounter any sort of issues, like if you can't find someone to interview, email me. I'll help you find somebody. But I don't I don't offer extensions for someone who says, "Oh, I couldn't find someone to interview." Like, no, you need to find somebody. So make sure you do that, and that you're following, of course, any additional directions I have for your writing projects, and following grammar, spelling, punctuation, all those good things. The majority of your projects will also require an APA reference list, and also that you follow Associated Press style. If a project does not require either of those things, I will specify you don't need to include this. But otherwise, just assume that you are following all of those guidelines. Now, the Associated Press style book quizzes, you will have 5 quizzes in the class. These cover common terms found in AP style, as well as spelling, punctuation, number usage, titles. These are only a few things covered in the quizzes, but everything is something that you can find in your textbook. And once you become familiar with the style guide, it is very easy to look up that information. I want you to look up that information. It's a lot easier whenever no matter where you're working, if you are able to look something up. than if you have to constantly try to remember a particular number or how you're supposed to write coronavirus or whatever the other term is. So your AP quizzes are open book. They are also timed. So even though it is open book, you do have a time limit. Make sure that you keep that in mind whenever you're working, and you should do well. Now, your chapter quizzes are also open book. They are also timed. You will have a quiz for each chapter. Now, quizzes will cover a combination of key terms, which can be found at the end of each chapter. Also, main ideas from the chapter, and they'll take different forms like true, false, multiple choice, matching, fill in the blank. Sometimes short answer questions will appear as well. And again, open book. So it should be pretty easy. One thing I do recommend is going in the back of your textbook and marking your glossary. You do have a glossary in the back that defines all of the key terms. So if you're having trouble figuring out which term goes to what definition, look it up in the back. It isn't a problem. For now, of course, you will be taking these quizzes remotely. Whenever we go back in the classroom, I anticipate having them, you taking them during the class period. Now, again, I do use Moodle for the majority of your classroom work. So attendance, quizzes, writing projects, all of those should be turned in on Moodle. Make sure whenever you do any of these things that you press save. Please press save. Don't forget, if you don't press save, it doesn't count. And if you encounter any sort of issues, you can email me and let me know if there's any problem, if maybe you can't open a link or you don't see something that you need for a project. Send me an email and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And one last note, of course, plagiarism is not tolerated at UL. They do have an entire, I think, PDF about plagiarism in the university handbook. Now, what is considered plagiarism? Of course, that's when you directly copy information and you don't cite your sources correctly. I do understand there is a little bit of a learning curve whenever you mention things in class, or whenever you're learning how to write for traditional news. So generally speaking, I'm usually pretty lenient about that. But again, make sure that you're following class directions and citing everything appropriately, that you're including your references, and that you understand you can't copy your classmates' work, because I will notice, I mean, even though I grade hundreds of papers, I do notice. Also, I do not accept late assignments. The deadlines are final. However, you do have one do-over per semester. While this does help the majority of people, I want to remind you that means there's only one opportunity. So if you do miss one assignment, then that would be your one do-over. Or if you do turn in everything, but one of your grades wasn't so great, then you're allowed to look at it and look at my corrections and rewrite it. However, I would mostly stick to the deadlines and make sure that you're reading all of the directions for each assignment. Now, if you have any questions, make sure that you email me. We can set up a Zoom meeting or email each other, whatever works better for you. And I will see you guys soon, hopefully. Bye.